Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Build Your Copywriting Business podcast. Hey there, Kate.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Okay, guys, today we are going to talk copywriting, of course, but we're also going to talk a little bit copywriting adjacent because, spoiler alert for the rest of the episode, copywriting, yes, of course, can obviously take you into copywriting roles. That's not a surprise, I hope. But it can also take you into other roles as well. And so in this episode, we want to talk through what some of those roles are and how copywriting can actually open all kinds of different doors to you.
Yeah, we want you to start thinking about all of the possibilities because it's very easy to limit ourselves and just think, well, copywriting. And if that's what you want to do, absolutely. But it's kind of nice to know that as your career goes on, that you have options. And we want you to know about all of those options.
Absolutely. Speaking of which, and I think some of these have titles that, honestly, I think the titles are a little bit confusing. And I was actually about to say, in my day, it's still my day. It's still my day. Just maybe not.
Alive.
I'm not a little baby copywriter anymore. But for example, the title of UX content designer or content designer, I am used to it being called content strategist, something along those lines. The idea, I think designer makes it confusing, right? Because you're designing in the sense that you are planning out the content, but you're not actually design. Like a UX designer is someone who designs the user experience. What UX stands for, user experience. The who actually moves pixels and draws lines on computers. Wow, it's a good thing I'm not a designer, huh? But a content designer is someone who plans and strategizes the content and how people are going to experience that content. So I prefer the term content strategist. I'm not going to go I clearly already spent too much time talking about this, but this is a role that very clearly copywriting can help you in, because you have that element of, you've learned that element of strategy that, quite frankly, a lot of your average content writers just have not developed that skill.
And I think the other thing is copywriters, we know how to dig into our audience and who we're writing toward. And similarly, as whether you want to call it a content strategist, UX content designer, doing some sort of user research and digging into how they're using a site and going about a site is a very adjacent skill, in the sense that you're looking at what people are actually doing. And same thing when you're doing audience research with copywriting, of thinking, okay, what words is my target audience using? What are they saying? How are they speaking about this? What are their pain points? It's a very similar experience of exploring, okay, when they come to a website, how are they navigating this? What are they looking at? If they're on this piece of content, what do they need to take away? How can I help guide them through this? It's all the same level of skills, just applied, I feel like, in a slightly different way.
Absolutely agree. I think also too, just it's a pretty broad term, but something like a communications specialist or communications manager or that kind of thing. Obviously, that's very broad, and that could encompass public relations. It could encompass corporate communications. It could, depending on the company, incorporate marketing and copywriting. I think that maybe the trickiest thing is that titles differ so much from company to company. There's no standard for some of these titles, which you have to dig into the job description. But very certainly, if you have a background in copywriting and you have a really good understanding for strategic writing and how to get people to take an action that you want them to take, that's going to pair really, really well with anything that you're doing in the communications field as a, like we said, communication specialist, manager, all of that kind of thing.
And, CCA students, you do have an entire course on writing press releases. So we do cover that medium. But to Nikki's point, all of the principles of copywriting are going to benefit you in this of, what is the benefit to the user? Who's going to read this piece of communication? What is this communication? Who's going to read it? What information do they need to know? And how do I most effectively communicate that so that they get exactly what they need from it?
Absolutely. And I think along with that too is just speaking in broad terms, a content specialist. It's like, well, how is that different from a content writer? Probably not that different. Probably not that different at all, except maybe just in addition, there is a little bit of strategy involved. But content specialist, content writer, content manager, anything that is focusing on the, as you guys know, anything that's focusing on the messaging that is designed to educate, entertain, or inspire, things that help people move down that customer journey, kind of nurture them and help them to uh, feel better about the brand or like the brand, increase that know, like, and trust factor, I think falls into that content bucket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as a content specialist strategist, however you want to kind of phrase this, again, look at all the job descriptions for these things, and you'll realize you probably have a lot of the skills needed to do them. And I think just the word choices that people use might throw you off of like, well, it doesn't say copywriter, doesn't mean you couldn't ace these jobs. And so with something like content in particular, obviously, if you are interested in writing more copy with a content job, you're probably going to be writing more content. And with that, though, you might be digging into, what blog posts are on my client's website? What gaps do we maybe need to fill at each stage of the consumer journey? So, if a customer is unaware about us, what do they need to know at that stage in the customer journey versus all the way down to when they're making a purchase? What content do we have there to support that decision making? And coming up with the topics really that you need to either update on the site. Maybe there's stuff that's very outdated. Maybe there's stuff that needs condensing. Maybe there are two blog posts where you say, "Oh, these are saying the exact same thing. Is that serving our customer in the best way? Can we make this less confusing?" And then obviously new stuff and looking at competitors. What are our competitors doing, and what content do we need to create to make sure that they're not going to finding this information that they need on our competitor site versus finding that information on our site. So there might be a little bit digging into not just writing those pieces, but figuring out what those pieces are that need to be written.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and as we talk too about content and copy, don't forget too that we, as the professionals, as the copywriters, we understand what the difference is between copy and content. Not every company is going to. Not every company does. So you might see a job listing for a content writer, and you might, as you're reading it through, you're going, actually, a lot of this is copy, and vice versa. You might see a job listing for a copywriter, and it's a lot. As you read through, you go, a lot of this is content. Sometimes people are looking for experience across both those fields. But of course, that as a copywriter, you are especially able to, if you want to take a job that also involves content writing, you're especially able to do that well and hit those goals better because you have that strategic thinking, the skill that you built up as a copywriter.
Mm-hmm. And with all of these jobs, whatever the project is that you're working on, you're going to want to be working from some sort of creative brief too. That doesn't just apply to a copywriting role. Yes, you want to create a brief for a webpage or a banner ad or whatnot, but you also want to create a brief, especially for any piece of content. If you're writing a blog, you would go through that same process, and you might ask some different questions in particular of what hole is this aiming to fill in our content that we have and that we're putting out in the world. But it's largely going to be following that same outline.
Mm-hmm. And then really the last kind of title to keep an eye out for, generic, is marketing writer. And I guess same thing, advertising writer, that kind of thing. But if you're on Indeed or something like that, and you are looking for jobs, certainly search for copywriter, set up an alert for copywriter. And this is, by the way, whether you're looking for a full-time job or whether you are looking to freelance. Get these alerts, because our students know that there are ways to pitch yourselves to people who are looking for a full-time position as a freelancer. But what I was going to say is that, yes, set up alerts for copywriter, but also just set up alerts for writer in general, and maybe set up alerts for content, maybe set up alerts for, all you have to you get the emails, you skim through, and if there's nothing you're interested in, delete it. But it's better to cast a wider net to make sure that you're not missing any opportunities. I mean, here's the thing too. They need a writer. So there's a decent chance that the job description was not written very well and may not have the right words in it. So cast a wider net and make sure that you're not going to miss any opportunities just because it's not because someone didn't specifically put copywriter in it, or maybe they had a space in there and then it's, between copy and writer and it's not showing up in your search. Just make sure that you're casting that wide net. Hey there, it's Nikki. I wanted to take a very quick minute to make sure that you knew about our free on-demand copywriting training. Now, whether you are brand new to copywriting or you've been doing it for a while, but you just can't seem to hit those income goals, this training is for you. You are going to learn the 3 secrets to landing freelance copywriting work without relying on frustrating job bidding sites like Upwork or Fiverr, or without cold calling strangers. And if you've watched any of the student success stories on this channel, and if you haven't yet, check them out. This is the exact same training that they all started with. And I mean students like Kate K, who is making 6 figures, working part-time, and retired her husband to help her build her business. Students like Stuart, who replaced his full-time salary, which was a good one, with his freelance income and then some. Stacy, who hit 6 figures in her first 6 months as a freelance copywriter, and Ashley, who landed the in-house copywriting job of her dreams. They all started with this free training, and you can start with this free training too. So sign up right now at freecopywritingtraining.com.
Yeah, another one to look out for too is a social media writer. I feel like a lot of people need people to churn out content for social, and certainly that's, working with a designer to what copy is going to go on an image or within a script of the video or within the caption itself on social. There's so many elements that relate to messaging when it comes to social media that it's honestly easy to forget. It's not just that description of the post. It's who wrote the hook for the reel, or who wrote the hook for the TikTok, and what is the call to action? Is there a clear call to action in each of these pieces that we're posting? And, not all of them have to be buy this thing, but also kind of coming up too with that mix of where the strategy comes in of, do we want people commenting? Do we want people liking? Do we want people sharing? Do we want people, making a purchase of some kind, or clicking a link somewhere, or DMing us, and all of these things that as a copywriter, you have the skills to do that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And we pulled together a couple of episodes. If you're looking, I know we love our student stories here. So we did pull together a couple of episodes of students who are, obviously, they're CCA students. They trained in copywriting, but they have taken their careers in a slightly different direction. I think we have one is a marketing director. We have a couple of different, I don't know if you have it right in front of you, Kate.
I do.
Refresh my memory.
We have Carly, who is a social media manager, and she actually got her job. She connected with another CCA student, which is very lovely. Adele, who was the head of communications when she worked with Carly, and then since left to another head of communications, or communications director. I forget. Sorry, Adele. I think it's head of communications. Either way, cool title.
Queen of communications.
Queen, way like that. Yeah. And so, social media manager is Carly, marketing strategist, Sunny. And so we'll link these 3 episodes below. And to toot my own horn, I moved from copywriting. I still do copywriting. I'm still doing in the weeds as a freelance copywriter, but acting as the marketing manager for Fully Rich Writer. And
acting as, I mean, it would say it's more than just acting.
Pull off my mask. Still a copywriter underneath.
Scooby-Doo style reveal. Yes.
But just in case it's helpful for anyone, I think it's, after I think 10 plus years as a copywriter, I was kind of in a space that's like, okay, I love this and I could keep on doing this. But I'd learned enough at that point that I wanted to apply myself and the skills and knowledge that I had in other ways. And after, frankly, working with marketing managers at various companies, where I was like, oh, I actually know
I could do
more than, why haven't you thought of this? I quickly realized, yes, there's an element of imposter syndrome, if you want to call it that, of just feeling like, well, but I'm a copywriter. How can I just move into this role as a marketing manager? But that's what everyone does. Like, spoiler.
Yeah. Nobody's born knowing marketing.
Right. Well, and you move into different titles and different roles, and that's how it goes. And if you have the skills to fulfill that role, then yes, put on that title like a proud cape and wear it. I'm going to make a cape now. Yeah.
A cape. Love it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the final thing that I want to leave you guys, or we want to leave you guys with too, is just the idea that being able to craft strategic, effective messaging that gets people to take action, messaging that persuades people, messaging that gets across an idea succinctly and
connects with them emotionally.
Thank you. Great point. Is valuable in just about any role. We hear back regularly from students that say, well, I didn't actually end up going into copywriting, but the skills that I acquired got me a raise in this role that I'm in now, or things along those lines. It just makes you a more marketable professional in whatever field you're in.
Yeah, well, Link actually, it reminds me of Tyler, was another student who got into copywriting. I believe he freelanced for a while and then had a full-time role with some sort of communications, I think, title, and then combined his skills. He was formerly in the military, and so combined those skills with the communication skills, and now I think he's in an operations role. So
yeah,
it's you have so many more skills than you realize, and I think we just are very good at limiting ourselves for no good reason. I think our brain's just like a neat box of like, here's what I am, and this is what it is, versus, we just want to shake it up, and there's so many possibilities, and there's no reason not to explore them and not to have more skills. Having more skills is never a bad thing, really. Being more attractive to employers by having these skills is never a bad thing. I think literally any role, if you've ever worked in any sort of role where you're emailing colleagues back and forth, that copywriting alone would help so many people craft a more effective email. Like, think about the subject lines that people write, and you're like, what the heck is this? What do you want from me? And then you read the email and you're like, there's 5 things in this one email, I think. Or you send an email to someone and then they miss stuff. Anyway, clearly digging up some experience here.
It's getting a little ragey. Yeah. But in a nutshell, your copywriting skills open doors, and keep an eye out for those doors, and be open to open doors.
Yeah. And we'd be remiss too. I mean, of course, there is the option to kind of take the traditional, if you will. I don't even want to say traditional, because I feel like there is no traditional career trajectory for a copywriter per se.
Great.
But I think there is if you want to think logically and think, well, I want to be a copywriter, what are the opportunities for me after that? Like, how do I kind of move up the ladder, if you will, of copywriting? And certainly as a copywriter, there levels at different companies, often in bigger companies, different levels of copywriters, and you become a senior copywriter. And then there's associate creative director and creative director. And once you get some experience under your belt, which can happen very quickly, if you've worked with designers, you've worked with project managers, you've worked in these teams, then as an associate creative director, you will have the skills, to be like, this isn't working, this design, here's why it's not answering the brief. Here's how I think we could do it better. And you'd have those skills in that role to be able to not only give effective feedback to copywriters in that role, but also potentially designers that are working on your team as well to come up with an effective piece that is meeting the brief. And so that would be kind of again, it's not really traditional at this point. I think it's maybe an agency.
An option.
It's an option.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's one of the
in-house
many
teams.
options.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then after creative director, I don't know, become the VP of marketing at the company, or
or just take over the company.
Start your own agency.
So many options.
Retire early. That's my goal, actually.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Just not too soon. We need you here. And so with that, we will catch you guys in the next episode. Bye, everybody.
Like what you heard? Hit subscribe so you never miss a video. And if you're ready to take the first step toward becoming a copywriter yourself, sign up for a free video training right here.